Well, so two words that are going around in my mind a lot right now, in terms of as I'm thinking about how I embody Christianity personally, are participation and reordering. And so he began reordering his life so that he wasn't, he talks about having like a baseline of anxiety that so many people go through and so many people have. Participating in the kingdom is to be called to a life that is completely other than anything else you see. There are all these things that the world around us is trying to get our participation. Are you going to when we are mad at so and so, we are mad at this country, we are mad at this person, we are mad at this situation.
Totally.
Are you going to participate in that? Are you going to be a part of that?
Right.
Hey, we're spending our money on this. This is what we spend our money on cars, on clothes, on houses, on this or whatever. Are you going to participate as well, or do you dare to look slightly different?
Yes.
And I'm finding myself, and I'm at the very early stages, I'm finding myself asking in a lot of ways, like, okay, what actually am I going to participate in? There's this really beautiful thing where he talks about he and his wife, they parent their self-ends. So as a parent, I go to sleep after my kids, and they wake up after I wake up. And so he's like, at 8:30, my phone goes to bed. And then it doesn't wake up until I've been up for an hour in the morning every single day. And, even with the whole cell phone thing, I was finding myself under... So I might not be the guy who is paying people terrible wages, putting them in terrible living conditions and stuff like that.
Wow.
But maybe in that situation, I'm stood off. I'm passively participating. Looking on, approving.
Not interrupting.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Subtly participating.
Yeah.
Even though...
Yeah, I'm there. I'm in the vicinity.
Yeah.
If you ask anyone in our culture, do you know that people in poor countries are being exploited to make the clothes that you wear? No one is surprised by that, really, are they?
I'm concerned, bro, that we have subtly adopted American culture, Western culture and value system. I'll just give you an example around fame.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
The Christian famous deal. So maybe that
I'm
seems
laughing
like that.
because I'm agreeing. I'm like, yes, my dude.
Okay, so good. We'll talk about this for the next 3 hours. And this is kind of what I'm going to preach on.
BSSM, in terms of Christianity, Western charismatic Christianity, is a destination that has a name to it.
Yes.
For lack of a better phrase, it's a glamorous place to be if you're a Western charismatic Christian who likes worship music.
Status
associated. It very much has status to it. Is that good? Is that bad? Is it neutral?
Right.
All three.
Yes. Very well said.
And so...
This is an era of spectacular progress, particularly in bringing the good things of life to more and more people.
And from their talks was forged a map for the path to freedom, a compact for the future, A map for the path to freedom.
Topics where we just teach students to talk about difficult and divisive things that people get really upset about.
This is why we're sitting across the table from each other right now. 100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Tell me more.
And so as soon as she said it, I was like, I felt, when something says a God thing and you're like, oh, I was like, I feel like this could be a good idea. So
yes,
I'm like, okay, I feel like Dan Farley would be scared by this, and I feel like Britt would be scared by this. So I'm going to text them both and just see what they think about it.
Yes.
So I text Dan, and he's essentially like, yeah, do it if you feel good about it. I was like, okay. And then I speak to Britt about it. She's like, yeah, go for it. And so, we've spoken about abortion, politics.
Really?
We're talking tomorrow morning, talking about toxic masculinity and feminism. And, it's like space for people to disagree, but it's, when you're just so used to talking with people over Facebook and hammering down on the keyboard trying to get
Yes.
to some kind of useful place. Should this be up here or?
Wherever.
Okay.
Wherever's comfortable.
Okay, cool. And so it's been really good. A lot of people are asking me to do it again next trimester already, and I'm just like,
Really?
yeah.
What's it called?
Hot topics.
Hot Topics.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of calling the podcast Untriggered. Just being, because it's like we have to have space to disagree with each other. Right now, we're not even allowed to disagree.
Yes.
And I don't know. I feel like a lot of the time we both know this. People are just so bad about talking about controversial things when people could disagree with them.
But within that, it's so important to have like a forum or a place of discourse to be able to actually face to face unpack some of this in in a longer form.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus like a few written paragraphs. It's so that is such a terrible medium. You know?
Like my one of my mottos for the class is nothing good happens on Facebook. Like I say it like every week, nothing good happens on Facebook, and it's true.
Gosh. So what are you doing for Bethel Music now? Should we just jump right in?
Yeah, let's just do it.
So Golibé, my friend, all these years, we did BSSM together.
Yeah, 8 years ago.
Day. It's been 8 years, bro. You're working for Bethel Music now.
Yeah.
You're revival group pastoring, still here in Reading.
Yeah.
Family. What are you doing for Bethel Music?
So I am the community manager for Worship You, which is the online platform for Bethel Music stuff.
Okay.
This you're asking at like a pretty complicated time because we're in the middle of a sort of a restructure. Okay. And so if you ask me this again in 3 weeks, I'd probably give you
a completely different answer. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So I'm just going to leave it there for right now because I don't know how everything's going to fall in the next couple of weeks. But community manager, Worship You, engaging with our community there through social media, email, stuff like that, planning for the future, also business development, stuff like that.
Okay. And you have a background in some of that, yeah?
Yeah, a little bit. The job that I was working before I became a revival group pastor, I did do some business development outreach stuff for them. So I'm pretty familiar with it. It's pretty comfortable, pretty straightforward for me. So yeah, I like it.
That's great. Mm-hmm. And when did you start this podcast again?
The AMT.
It's the AMT, but it's the podcast that you're thinking about plugging
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Sorry, I misheard.
Yeah, so we're in, the AMT's in second year, runs 6 weeks long, and so tomorrow is week 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
7 weeks long, tomorrow's week 6, yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, and it just all came from a crazy, well, not even a crazy, just an offhand comment that really felt like the Lord. Huh. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. And it's been great. I've enjoyed it. It's 8:30 in the morning. And so obviously with 2 kids, one of whom is, 9 months old and doesn't necessarily sleep that well. Yeah. There are a lot of times when, as I'm driving in at 8:30 in the morning, I'm kind of like, oh my gosh. But then as soon as we get into it, every week I'm like, yeah, this is great. I love this so much. Yeah.
That's so your gifting too, man. The little that I do know you and the few super revelatory conversations we've had, you're just designed to like pull things apart and lay out all the different facets of super complicated stuff and problem solve. And
it's my favorite, honestly, just talking about it and trying to get as holistic a grasp on things as possible. Because I think one of the things that's so interesting about the time we're living in is that you'd think that with the amount of information that we have available to us, imagine if Einstein had an iPhone 10, the amount of information that he'd have in his hand, right there, it's mind-blowing. So the number of people in the past who would have dreamed about how much information that we have at our fingertips all the time, you'd think that in an age where information is abundant, that truth would also be really easy to discern, but it's actually been completely the opposite. Wow. That if anything, it's become even harder to tell what's what. And so, times are divisive. People get really mad about everything all the time. And so having a forum where someone can say, take guns, for example, that we talked about last week, where someone can say, I'm pro-gun, and here's why. And someone can say, I'm not pro-gun, and here's why. And for them to not freak out at each other like they would do in a Facebook back and forth.
Yes. That's a win.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a huge win. We really need that as a culture.
Yeah, and so many times, I said this at the beginning because, you've been in AMTs 7 weeks long, an hour and a half-ish each week. Yeah. So you don't have time to do that much. You have time to do stuff, but you don't have time to do that much. And I said to my AMT at the beginning, we're not really going to be solutions oriented here. So I'm not trying to say, and bada bing, bada boom, here's the right answer. My main thing is so that you can
learn how to think.
You learn how to think, appreciate before you start forming an opinion that there are way more things happening here than you're perhaps aware of. And so it's really easy to jump to a firm conclusion when you don't know that much.
Yes.
But when you stop and think about it, it's kind of like, oh, wow.
Yes.
This is way more complicated than I perhaps thought. This is way more complicated than Fox News or MSNBC or whatever are telling me.
1,000%.
And now, all of a sudden, now that I do have some information that kind of puts me off balance, is it still right for me to have such a strong visceral reaction about this, to feel so strongly about my particular point of view, or do I actually need to enter into the grey and start having a back and forth?
Yes.
It might not be that people's minds get changed.
Yeah.
I don't think maybe a couple of times I've asked people, hey, whose mind has changed over the course of this AMT? And maybe a few people.
Sure.
But the thing that I do often ask is, hey, who's learned something that surprised them? And every time, ton of hands go up in the air.
Yes.
So it's fun. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Oh my gosh. You got me drooling. That's what I love to do. And that's why I do this podcast. A huge reason is to, I don't think there's a whole lot of people in specifically the Christian world that have the fearlessness or lack or freedom from religion even. Because religion is so straight line, stay in the box, do what is, only do what is socially acceptable to the rest of the church. Yeah. And there's a certain freedom and a confidence I think even a confidence in Holy Spirit as teacher. Yeah. To be able to branch out and ask and question, and even the ability to question and think. Like going through BSSM, that's something I so appreciated about Chris Valentin specifically. So he was constantly like bringing up things and topics and discussions in like our large classroom setting, maybe not as much of a discussion, but he's almost discussing and externally processing something that he didn't fully know the answer to. Yeah. And it started to teach me, it's actually really healthy to question from not a place of unbelief or mistrust in the Lord, but question along with the Lord and really start pulling apart some of your paradigms and different things. Yeah, I mean, there are so many things that we inherit that we don't even realize that we've inherited. Man. It's crazy. I mean, I was in a group. I'm in a group text. I'm like super blessed to be in a group text with 3 people who are super into theology and stuff like that. So I'm the complete noob who just asks questions, and I'm like, what about this? Yes. One of them's getting his PhD in biblical studies right now. He's going to be a Pauline scholar. Whoa, another one's a political theologian. Okay. Another one is super deep into like narrative theology and stuff like that. Okay. But we were talking yesterday, and we had this long conversation about something, but we ended up getting to the Good Samaritan. And like this is like a really good example of the lens that we just get given that we don't realize. Because obviously it's like we know that the Samaritans weren't necessarily liked by the Jews in Jesus' day, but growing up in church, we get told the parable of the Good Samaritan from when we're really young. So we're not surprised when Samaritan turns out to be good.
But when you read into it, one of my friends in this group text, he told me before that for the Jews, if you went through a Samaritan village and got the dust from the village on you, you were considered unclean.
Wow.
And they had a view of the Samaritans that they weren't even human. And so one of the things that's really revelatory about when Jesus encounters the Samaritan woman at the well is that, I've always tried to be like, what is he saying to her about worship and stuff like that? All the things he says about true worship, spirit and in truth, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And that's a really good discussion.
Totally.
But this guy, he said something really simple that really brought it home in a new way. He's like, Jesus has a conversation with her and treats her like she's not an idiot, which is mind-blowing for that time and that place, And so going back to the Good Samaritan, we're told like, okay, kids, let's learn about the Good Samaritan, so it's completely within our paradigm that we've been given that the Samaritan is going to be the hero in the story.
Yeah.
But to the heroes, to Jesus' contemporaries, he starts off with like the priest and then the Levite. And then I read somewhere that I found this funny that Jesus sneaks the Samaritan in through the back door. So for the first time hearers, that would have just been the worst person that you could have said ever is showing neighbor love.
Oh my gosh.
And that
makes it a completely different story.
Yeah.
And a completely different theological truth and reality.
Totally, yeah.
Those little nuances, dude. I was just listening to Paul Young, who wrote The Shack, and, on a preach, and he was saying how, there's so much in, and even Harold Eberle, who we've talked about before, with Victorious Eschatology, and written just a number of incredible books in a very different stream of thinking about God and seeing God through different lenses. But Paul Young was talking about how so much of the stuff that's in our Bibles has just been translated in a kind of accurate translation, but then we've just given it certain connotations that end up down theological roads and build whole systems that aren't necessarily accurate. Just super frustrating for me, actually, because I'm like, I love reading the Bible, but half the time when I'm reading the Bible now, to be honest, I'm like, what is actually what is actually like real in this translation? And I almost feel like I need to go through and dissect piece by piece into the Greek and Hebrew. It makes me want to like learn Greek. And learn Hebrew, to be honest. But Paul Young was talking about that verse that says, where Jesus says, when I am lifted up, I will draw all men unto myself. He said, that word is not draw, it's drag. which makes that whole paradigm of like Jesus, like, oh, I will try to bring just, I will allure everyone, no, but every other time it's used in the New Testament, it's drag. When Paul and Timothy, or I don't think it was Timothy, but when Paul was drug before in Acts, before the council, it's the word drag. And so it's just as an example.
I love that. It's like I think of Jesus as the soccer mom rallying the troops. Everyone is coming in this car right now.
Totally though. Totally. It makes that whole reality about God seem like that's a way bigger God to me. Totally. That would choose to like, no, I'm dragging you. Kicking and screaming no matter what. That's like a ferocious love. You know? So anyway, What else? What else have you been? So an AMT is a
advanced ministry training.
Advanced ministry training specifically for BSSM.
Yeah, for BSSM.
Okay, and it's a second year deal or first
second
year?
Year one.
Second year deal.
Yeah.
Okay. What else have you been going after? Or chatting through?
So I think a couple of things. One thing. So have you read that book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer?
No, but I just got delivered because of the title.
Yeah.
That is good stuff.
Yeah.
It's The Ruthless
Elimination of Hurry.
John, and he's the pastor from Portland, right?
Yes, he is.
I've listened to some of his
This
stuff.
Cultural Moment. If you had, great podcast.
Oh my gosh.
And so he wrote a book about basically slowing down.
Wow.
And he talks about how he began to change his entire life, basically because he knew that he was going to burn out if he didn't keep on going the way he was going.
Wow.
You know, when the church was doing really well, he was preaching 6 services a week and everything, and he was just like, I can't do this anymore. So he stripped himself of a load of his responsibilities. He was like, people are going to say that I messed up. He's like, I didn't. They're going to say I wasn't tough enough. Probably true. You know, that I wasn't smart enough. Not true.
He's a super bright guy.
Yeah, he's really smart. Yeah. And how he just began to, well, so 2 words that are going around in my mind a lot right now, in terms of as I'm thinking about how I embody Christianity personally, are participation and reordering. And so he began reordering his life so that he wasn't, you know, he talks about having like a baseline of anxiety that so many people go through and so many people have. And, you know, I've got 3 third years, BSSM 30s with me at Bethel Music.
Okay.
And so we read it as a team. And I read the foreword and I was almost in tears. You know, I texted my team, I was like, this book is going to be great.
It struck a note for your season.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And so it's really made me question what I want my life to look like and what I want the fruit of my life to be.
Wow.
So there are some really, really practical things in there that he talks about. Say like with your cell phone, for example. He has this really beautiful thing where he talks about he and his wife, they parent their cell phones. So as a parent, you know, I go to sleep after my kids and they wake up after I wake up. And so he's like, at 8:30, my phone goes to bed. And then it doesn't wake up until I've been up for an hour in the morning every single day.
Yes.
And, you know, even with the whole cell phone thing, I was finding myself under, it wasn't even anxiety, but you know, when you just, and it wasn't even that I was doing anything bad on my cell phone.
Totally.
I'd get dragged into, I'm obsessed with the idea of being able to cook and host people.
Yes.
So I'd be like, oh yeah, dry aging steak and, you know, reverse sear and butter basting. You know, I'd click on one YouTube video, then it just down a rabbit hole.
Totally.
And then the whole time I used to just have this nagging thing like, I should be doing something else. But oh look, here's a video about beekeeping.
Right.
Shoot, I should get some bees. Brittany, we're gonna get bees, you know? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so it was just all these ways that I was essentially just wasting my time. It wasn't even on anything bad, you know?
Yeah.
Like who's going to get mad at someone for being interested in beekeeping? You know, it's not a bad thing. But I was like, what is my life looking like? How is it that I am participating in the kingdom of heaven right now? And so that was just a really big thing that I literally deleted all of the social media off my phone. And I'm a kind of intense guy. I'm not intense, but I'm intense at the same time, kind of like you.
I got you. I'm tracking. Yep. Yep.
And so pretty much 2 or 3 times a year, I'll say like, okay, that's it. For 30 days, 60 days, I'm getting rid of all of it.
Yes.
And then I'll do it. It'll be great.
Yeah.
And then somehow, as I finish that allotted time, I'll kind of get back into it again slowly. Right. But now I was like, no, I actually just want to reorder my life. I just want this to be my life altogether. Yeah. Because how much does Instagram matter really? You know, how much does knowing what people are up to on Facebook matter really? Nothing good happens on Facebook.
There
right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and so getting rid of all of that, making sure that I'm having my time of silence and solitude in the morning, that's something that came really, really easy to me before I had children. Bless my kids, I love them so much.
Totally.
But
it's a completely different reality.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it's a totally different. How does that secret place and that morning time function when all of a sudden there's little ones running around and they need attention and and you know,
and this is coming from me kind of living the lap of luxury as a BSSM student, an international BSSM student who wasn't allowed to work.
You're talking to another international.
Exactly. So
Yes.
So I come here in first year, is single, unmarried, go to sleep whenever I want, wake up 10 o'clock if I wanted to. I mean, I'm an early riser anyway, so say wake up 8:30, 9 o'clock. I could just lounge about, have a solid hour, 2 hours in the presence of the Lord, lazily make my way to school for 12:30, you know.
Worship Jesus
Yeah,
all day.
exactly.
No responsibilities, just living in the glory. I'm so spiritual and I'm so good at loving people.
Yes, exactly.
And then life shifts when you get married and have kids, bro.
Exactly.
I don't have the kid part yet.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out how to have a healthy secret place and be married.
Yeah.
Let alone with kids.
Exactly.
I'm tracking.
Exactly. And so it's that thing where I'm like, okay, I have to fight for this. But what the cool thing is that in the fighting for it, it's been more about intentionality, and it doesn't have to necessarily look a certain way. My most fruitful times at the moment, at least in this season, are the times when I just get to be silent and meditate. You know, my two go-tos are, you know, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
Oh, dude.
And you are good and your love endures.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of mornings, if it's 5, 7, 10 minutes that I just get to sit quietly, having not looked at my phone, having not had someone text me about something, having not been, you know, wondering if trying to get that dopamine fix from Instagram or whatever. Man. It's been beautiful.
Wow.
And so I am finding myself, you know, this is the first step of me just reordering things. I'm trying to institute more of a Sabbath into my week. So, for example, from Friday night to Saturday night-ish, I'm not really super formed in that yet, which is fine, honestly. I'm not doing any work. You know, I'm even trying to like not do laundry, not do grocery shopping. You know, when the kids have their nap time, I'll go to a coffee shop and read, journal, whatever. That's my time where I get to just rest and relax. You know, as my kids get older, there'll be more freedom for it to be more expansive, you know, for them to start participating in it as well. But my 2-year-old's like, hey, Dad, it's a day, any day in the week, and you're here, and I'm bored.
And you're my dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's hang out.
Exactly. So it's been really fruitful. And with the whole participation thing, again, it's something that he brings up in the book, because these are things that had been going. Part of the reason why I love the book so much was that it struck so many chords for me that had been, you know, vibrating. That sounded weird, but vibrating in my own heart anyway.
Yes.
And he made a point about clothes, and he's pretty extreme about it. And I'm not saying everyone has to be that extreme about it, but he's like, hey, you know what? I've got pretty much 2 sets of clothes that I wear. You know, I go from one to the other, to the other, to the other, to the other. And, you know, I'm not necessarily going to do that, but what he does talk about is fast fashion and how
the decision-making fatigue, right?
Yeah.
Does it touch on that at all, or is it a different thing?
So he's talking about how we know that a lot of the clothes that we wear are made by people who are being exploited. And when it comes to fast fashion, it's the whole thing about always trying to get you to buy more and more and more and more. Very true. You know?
Yes.
And if it's cheap, it comes at a cost. You know, if something's really cheap, that's a question I always ask myself. Okay, so this is cheap here, but at what cost?
Okay.
And so I'm thinking about myself, and this is something that I'm passionate about anyway, but I've come to the decision that I'm like, hey, you know what? I don't want anyone to buy clothes for me anymore, because they'll always buy it from fast fashion outlets who have, you know, new clothes for every, you know, they'll have 3 new clothing seasons every year or whatever. And where are they built? You know, where are they made, and who is making them and stuff like that. And so the other day, I know I'm kind of going round and round, but I'm coming back to this whole participation thing.
Good.
But I was thinking about in Acts 8, when Stephen gets stoned, and Saul of Tarsus was there. He wasn't actively participating in the stoning, but he was there looking on, giving his approval. And I'm finding myself thinking about this a lot in so many situations, and fast fashion is just one of them. So I might not be the guy who is paying people terrible wages, putting them in terrible living conditions and stuff like that. But maybe in that situation, I'm stood off. You know, I'm passively participating. Looking on, approving. Yeah,
not interrupting.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
Subtly participating.
Even
though,
I'm there. I'm in the vicinity.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you ask anyone in our culture, do you know that people in poor countries are being exploited to make the clothes that you wear? No one is surprised by that, really.
No.
Are they?
No.
But do people do stuff to, you know, how many people reorder their lives so that they stop participating in that system? Not very many people.
Fascinating, dude.
And so this is just my thing that I'm feeling really strongly. And I'm like, I don't want to be a Saul of Tarsus.
Wow.
Who, you know, I don't have the stone in my hand. I'm not throwing it. But at the same time, am I in the vicinity? Am I completely aware of what's going on?
Wow.
And am I giving my approval to it?
Wow.
And so, the book goes through a bunch of all these things and talks about practices for eliminating hurry. And it's
what are some of those? What's some of that stuff?
You know, so silence and solitude, meditation. He talks a lot about going away to he talks a lot about how Jesus goes to the desolate places to pray a lot in the Gospels.
Yeah.
And so, you know, again, for my season, with a 2.5-year-old and a 9-month-old, I'm not going to be able to see like, hey, Britt, I'm going to peace out for like a day or two. Can you watch the kids and, you know, do your thing? So that's one of them that I'm like, okay, maybe in 5 or 6 years, I'll really be able to start doing that when just looking after the kids isn't exhausting.
Totally.
But it comes very, very highly recommended by me and my third-year team at BSSM.
No, it's fascinating, man, that you bring that up, because it feels to me, you know, in my own life, specifically in the context of my own spiritual growth and my own secret place, I've had seasons of very disciplined use of my cell phone, and then seasons where it's not as disciplined. And it feels like, first of all, we have to understand that our technology is a gift from heaven, and God's not opposed to it, but it's also designed by these engineers to be addictive.
Oh, yeah.
The most addictive thing ever. And this isn't new news. But for me, the awareness of like, okay, so this thing is wired, YouTube is wired to trigger my reward system. Yeah. And give me quick, easy dopamine hits that actually aren't really real, and they don't help me. That doesn't really help me in the long run. You know what I mean? It kind of desensitizes me to the risk and then reward. Natural progression to a sense of like satisfaction and fullness. I think there's like I don't know the actual scientific terms, but there's this progression of like you work hard for something, you do something, and then there's a reward. Yeah. And I think social media in some ways kind of short circuits that. So it's the cyclic, constant kind of addictive use that I know for me that I feel like my spiritual growth is on hold when I'm cycling in a like, I don't know, that kind of social media or whatever YouTube tail chase, you know?
It's the dopamine hit. You know, every time you open Instagram, what do you hope? You hope there's a notification that someone has liked something or commented on something or blah, you know, and so you don't get it. And then you put it down and then you start trying to do something else. And then you're like, oh, there's potential for a dopamine hit. You know, I might have a like or a comment or an inbox. Let's see what's happening. Yeah. You know, it's not that Instagram is bad. You know, it's not that technology is bad. It's not that iPhones are bad or whatever.
But it's got to have its order.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
It has to be in a spot.
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, man, I feel like learning how to, like, there's got to be practicality around it, right? So it can't just be, I'm just not going to do a whole lot of social media today. Like, I love how you decided, no, like 30 days, 60 days. Because I think sometimes, dude, we need the extreme. And is it fully necessary to go cold turkey zero? maybe not,
Yeah.
but why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I could totally
Yeah.
not do social media for a couple days or whatever. But I don't think I really need to.
Yeah.
You know, we talk ourselves out of it, and we're like, oh, it's not that bad. But like, no, I dare you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think for me, sometimes it's kind of like the power of fasting, where you just kind of go extreme with something and you cut like extra out, and there's something in this human spirit that focuses in on what's most important and most relevant. And
yeah, when I think of fasting, one thing I always repeat to myself is that if I am fasting, I'm fasting for my sake, not for God's sake.
Yes.
Which I think is something we can get drawn into with the whole fasting thing.
Definitely.
That we, you know, without necessarily articulating it as such, we have this idea of God in a state of anxiety over, you know, oh my gosh, what are they doing? Oh! You know, I was like, God, he's fine. He's, you know, he's been fine. He is fine. And he will be fine.
Yeah.
But I fast for my sake because for me, that's a way of being intentional, focusing in, cutting away the things that I don't need and that don't actually add life to me. You know, is Instagram bad? No. Is it life-giving? Probably not. Also.
It's like how Paul says, all things are permissible,
yes.
but not everything is actually beneficial.
Totally.
And that runs really deep.
Yes.
And I think specifically for us, Banning said this a long time ago, but like I think we live in the generation with the most options.
Yes.
Remember this?
Yes.
The most options ever. And it's going to be in the midst of all of these options that are choice for Jesus and stillness and protecting what is most significant and important actually stands uppermost, as the most powerful choice and decision ever.
That's it.
Because there's all of this stuff at our fingertips fighting for our distraction.
So I think for me, sorry to interrupt,
but
I think
please.
That exactly speaks to the whole thing about participation and reordering. Because I have a theory that a lot of the time the church is looking to, we say we want to be different from the world, but I think that we're trying to do the world better than the world, essentially. You know, we want to
describe that to me.
So, say for example, how people love it when like church becomes really cool. And essentially when young people show up wearing fashionable clothes and they look cool and they drink cool coffee and stuff like that. Right. And we get super stoked on that. Again, nothing wrong with being fashionable, nothing wrong with this, that and the other. Nothing wrong with, money can be a good example as well. How I think sometimes we want to be like, hey, look at how the Lord has blessed us. You've got a 3-bedroom house, the Lord gave me a 5-bedroom house. And there's this thing often where, and again, nothing wrong with having a 5-bedroom house. I would love a 5-bedroom house, please.
Yeah, totally.
There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that for me in the kingdom, it's participating in the kingdom is to be called to a life that is completely other than anything else we see. There are all these things that the world around us is trying to get our participation in. Are you going to when we are mad at so-and-so, we are mad at this country, we are mad at this person, we are mad at this situation.
Totally.
Are you going to participate in that? Are you going to be a part of that?
Right.
Hey, we're spending our money on this. This is what we spend our money on cars, on clothes, on houses, on this or whatever. Are you going to participate as well? Or do you dare to look slightly different?
Yes.
And I'm finding myself, and I'm at the very early stages, I'm finding myself asking in a lot of ways, like, okay, what actually am I going to participate in? It might be that I sound like a complete weirdo talking about clothes.
Right.
And being like, hey, I'm actually not going to participate in that. But we could talk about this in a bunch of different ways,
Yes.
And then the question that follows is, if I don't want to participate in this, but I want to participate in the kingdom as much as I'm aware, how willing am I to reorder my life so that my participation is focused here and not there? It goes to the iPhone or smartphones as well. Because I think about you know how people show videos of people in, developing countries being put in sweatshops and stuff like that, and it's always really heartbreaking or anger-inducing. And I remember perhaps I don't get angry very often, but this video got me so mad. Like, when I saw it, I was like, I am so angry right now. And it was a kid. He was like 8 years old.
Okay.
He was working to mine some kind of material that was used by smartphone developers. And he was 8 years old. It was raining. He didn't have many clothes on. It was muddy. And he was basically going back and forth, with a basket of like wet sopping soil on his head, it'd be put on his head. He'd have to go dump it out here so that they could filter it. He'd go back, someone would put some more in his, more in this basket on his head. And this was all so that we, almost definitely not people in his community, could have a smartphone. And I'm like, that is
revolting.
Disgusting. Yes. It just hit me right wherever my gut is, you know what I mean? But right wherever my anger bone is, it just hit me right in the anger bone. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, okay, so what if I could find a completely ethical smartphone company? But what if they didn't have the apps? What if they didn't have the look? What if they didn't have the camera? Would I be willing to, so as not to be a participant in this that I find disgusting, to cut away from all the things that people, and I'd look weird as well.
Right.
If I was to be like, hey, actually, I'm not going to buy any products from all the big people because I don't want to participate in this.
Yes.
Oh,
sorry, I actually can't airdrop this to you because I don't believe in smartphones.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, sorry, I can't text you that way because
and we've all done it. We've all
things.
given someone grief when we're in a group text and that one person has an Android and you're like, bro, you turned the whole thing green. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
So we'd look. It's something that would look weird. It'd be like, what? You really care about it that much? But as I was thinking about that, the question was, how willing are you to reorder your life so that you do not participate in this?
Yes.
And we're talking within the past couple of weeks, and I'm at the very, very beginning stages of this, and I want to say that I will have the conviction to carry it as far as I need to carry it. What if? And I don't even have that many conclusions right now.
Sure.
But
you're just having that internal dialogue.
With
your heart, with Holy Spirit, figuring out what's actually going on out there. Yeah.
And it's like, what if, for example, I came to the conclusion like, okay, I'm just never going to own an Apple product again. I'm never going to buy a Samsung TV. I'm never going to buy, maybe I'll just not have a TV because no one who makes them well is, treats people well. And I don't want to be Saul of Tarsus, not actively participating, but still at the side nodding, or in my case, giving my money over to it so that they can continue doing what they're doing. And so I'm, this is super raw, and I'm like, okay, I was listening to a conversation with N.T. Wright the other day, and he made this comment that again really stuck with me, and he was essentially saying that basically the way Christians are supposed to look in the world is that people are supposed to think that we're mad, but at the same time they want to have us around because we love our neighbors, we are generous, we are peaceful, this, that, and the other, and.
Mad in terms of angry or mad in terms of crazy?
Sorry, yeah. So he
crazy.
And N.T. Wright is British, so when he says mad, he means crazy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, people are supposed to think they're crazy, whether that we're out of our minds.
Yes.
Not just for our beliefs, but the way in which we order our lives.
Yes.
And so, I'm like, does anyone, besides from my belief systems that I tell people I have, belief in, Jesus crucified, Jesus resurrected. Does the way in which I live my life, does the way in which I order my life speak to participation in a kingdom that is entirely different to the one that I find myself in bodily?
I'm so blasted by that.
And so that's what I'm walking through.
Wow.
I mean, a thought went to my mind the other day. Could you imagine if the church as a whole was just like, actually, we're no longer going to buy X brand, because we don't want to be a part of it. I'm like, it's just crazy to me. And so that's me tearing everything apart, asking nobody to buy me clothes unless I know for a fact, and so it's like, well, what if instead of buying a sweater, one sweater every year for $40. I'm like, well, maybe I buy one sweater every 3 years and it costs $300
Yes.
because it's good quality and it's made by
Yes.
somebody who's getting paid well.
Yes.
Would I be willing to do that?
Totally.
You know, and I'm like, yeah, I would actually.
Yeah.
You know, that's step one.
Yeah.
But we'll see how deep the rabbit hole is.
That's powerful, man. This whole idea of living other than, I think on the one hand, I've been thinking a lot about this. I think maybe in my own, maybe in a little bit of a different spin, but that category of other than, to me speaks of which value system, which kingdom are we really living under? And I'm headed to Virginia, actually to see Elliot.
Oh, beautiful!
Yeah, bro. We're headed over next Thursday to Virginia, and I'm going to be speaking, and I've been ruminating in my spirit on this sense, and I feel this, because I'm going through it in my own heart, my own life, this sense and this kind of urgency of I'm concerned that our American churches, such a complicated issue, because I'm so over, I so don't want to fall into the category of just smashing the church.
Yeah, totally.
Because that's just been done and redone, and
Yes.
it's not my heart, but I have reformation in my heart.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And so people are just going to have to deal with that. But I'm just going to have to deal with it too, because there's a lot that I see that I'm like, I hate that. I really don't like it.
Yes.
And I feel like I have a prophetic sense, maybe that I don't even have language for, of what the Lord wants to do in the American church in this generation.
Yeah.
I don't have language, but I have this yearning, and so back to my original point, other than, I'm concerned, bro, that we have subtly adopted American culture, Western culture and value system. Particularly, I'll just give you an example around fame.
Oh,
The Christian famous deal.
Yes.
So maybe that
I'm
seems
laughing
like that.
because I'm agreeing. I'm like, yes, my dude.
Okay, so good. We'll talk about this for the next 3 hours. And this is kind of what I'm going to preach on, and what I've been thinking about is how and you could take this same principle and apply it to so many different areas, whether that's money or...
So along with fame, I think consumerism is a big thing that I feel like we in many ways, we are no different to the world. I think that...
It's concerning.
Yes. So no,
because it's in me, dude.
Yeah, totally.
We're not talking out there and it's everyone else's thing.
Totally.
No, it's right here.
Totally, yes.
And that freaks me the heck out.
Yes, no, I get you. I'm with you.
And I believe, let me be the work of Holy Spirit and transformation, because before revival is out there, it's here.
Yes.
Right? And before Reformation happened, 500 years ago in the whole church of the world, it took place, in large part in the heart of Luther. Yeah. And there was truth and alignment on the inside of him, and then there was transformation that came out of that. And little conversations like these, I think, help catalyze. It's another little step maybe in the right direction. But this whole thing on fame, dude. So every Christian I know, including myself, and the way we talk about, I had a conversation with this person, or I had this person on my podcast, or I had, this person came to pray for me, or I went to do this conference with this big name and this big name and this big name, and it's as if, so if you're to take that and then put it into the world, and how people are just nuts over Hollywood celebrities. Yes. I saw Brad Pitt in this restaurant. He was 3 tables away from me. Yeah. He was having a conversation with this other person about this, and we heard this, and oh my gosh, he said hi to you. He touched your arm. Yeah. Do you so is God in heaven going oh my God, oh myself? Brad Pitt prayed today for the first time in so long.
Yeah.
And I'm so, it's Brad Pitt. I think in heaven's culture, the obscure person in the Arabian frickin' desert who no one will ever know their name, when that person comes wholeheartedly to the Lord, that's just as significant to the Lord as in a lot of ways. That goes with that saying. But I'm trying to work this out in my head of like, how did we end up with Christian famous mentalities?
Yeah.
And then I'm also thinking to myself, well, is it wrong that, because you got to go down both roads, because the answer to Christian fame isn't someone gets big and we tear them down.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think like a good way, because I think about this a lot, is that, say for example, Jesus enters into the earth, the incarnation happens in the year 1990, and so Jesus turns 30 this year, and he starts his ministry.
Okay.
So say for example, one of the many instances where all the sick of the village were brought to him and he heals them all.
Yeah.
Someone, if this was 2020 that it was happening, someone would have been like, bro, this dude is healing everyone, record. So I think for me it feels pretty obvious that the name of Jesus and his exploits would have traveled much further, much quicker, had he been alive in 2020 rather than in say like the early 20s AD. And so with that being said, with the fact that Jesus in all likelihood would have been famous pretty quickly, does that therefore mean that Christian fame is okay?
Right.
And for me, well, have you finished your thoughts, and then I'll share mine.
Just one thing. I think the conclusion that I guess I kind of keep coming to is that this fame mentality, specifically in the church, it creates distance between leader and follower. Totally. And that distance that gap is shame. Often it's a subtle shame, and I think it's also an unrealistic expectation of what I am supposed to be as a Christian. Yeah. Like, to take Bill Johnson as an example, Bill is a pastor and lives a very unique and extraordinary life in his specific calling as a pastor. That life and that calling is not normal. It's almost not real. Yeah. In the sense of the normal everyday believer that's absolutely like center stage in heaven. That's nothing normal about that at all. The subtle, and I think it's often the immaturity of our own eyes looking at someone up on a stage. It also doesn't help that everyone's on stages with microphones and big lights and only talking about their strengths and never really about their weaknesses in any kind of profound way. And there's no real ability to dialogue. So I'm kind of a fan of like, should we just completely get rid of big church and just do house churches? I think that would actually solve a lot of problems. So I'm like, but you can't pass laws like that. And then it becomes religious. And so these are just deeply complicated issues. But to finish my thought, I think that oftentimes, is there anything wrong with Bill and his huge ministry? No, but I think there's issues with our own lenses and our own perceptions of sitting in a congregation, looking up at a man on a stage and making these assumptions and comparing ourselves among ourselves and comparing callings and thinking, because this man is this and has this influence, then that means that I am here and he is here, and that gap is an issue. Dude. Yes. Because God doesn't have that gap between Bill and whoever. There's no gap. And so that's kind of what I'm playing with right now.
So literally, as I was on the way up here, I was listening to a podcast about what Paul and the other apostles had to say about money. And The guy I was giving the podcast, he was referencing James and talking about how we are not supposed to show any favor towards someone based on how much money they have. And I feel like that whole money thing could be applied to so many more things. You know, it's this whole thing like, hey, you're not supposed to be like to this guy, hey, you have the seat of honor because you have this thing that we think that we desire, and you, could you just go in the back and everything? But I think one of the things that comes to mind as well is comparison. When you compare yourself to the person who's large and in charge on the stage, and you're there thinking like, wow, you know, I'm not doing that. No one wants to hear my revelation. I think it goes to shame as well. Comparison that leads to shame. Yeah. You know, one time when I was pastoring in school, God called me out on that really, really strongly, because Bill was talking about his personal life and his devotional life. Yeah. And, you know, Bill is such a humble guy. So there's no self-promotion in it. There's nothing negative like that. He was just he was just opening up part of his life to the students. Yeah. And as I was sat there listening, I just felt this like inside my own heart, because I was like, I am nowhere near that. Yeah. You know, and so I know there are so many things that Bill wants to see that he's not seeing, and you know, but he's seeing more than I am, and I want to see those same things as well, and I'm not matching up in this way. There is the gap between us. And in that moment, I just really felt as if God said to me, and who exactly are you to say what I can and cannot do in your life? I was like, you know, it was like yes, sir. And and I think that we end up making those comparisons so much between us and those who are famous, those who have followings.
It's subtle, dude. And it's also, that in and of itself, I feel is really complicated, because follow me as I follow Christ, right? That's a super biblical reality of
it's a bold statement.
It's intense, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's something about, there's multiple people, powerful people in the past who have said, the greatest thing, the most encouraging thing in my whole walk has been studying the lives of great men. And there's something that sharpens us and disciples us, and getting to walk under spiritual fathers, whether that's in the natural or like in the now, or you're gleaning from a father or mother from revival history or something like that. I think we so need that. I need that, dude. Yeah. I need to allow my heart to be challenged and convicted by areas that are not quite in alignment, or still operating in the fear of man, or we're called to bring heaven to earth, and that is not a small reality, you know? So in some senses, I guess maybe my question to you is this: how do you reconcile, we're supposed to compare our lives to Jesus's life. Yeah. And then his life, Jesus' life in others as well. And because that exposes things where we're called to do. Yeah. But then where is the line between, that's unproductive, condemning and shaming, and actually not what you're called to do? Yeah. And spurring you on, iron sharpens iron. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Totally. For me, it comes down to whether or not it's life-giving, and whether or not there is a winner or a loser in the comparison. Because some of my favorite messages that I've heard are when people have talked about stuff that has provoked me. It's like, okay, we can do this. We can do this as a community. God can work like this through my life as well. But in the moment with Bill that I was talking about, that was
right.
Woe is me, Eeyore. He's up here, I'm down here. Yeah. There's something fundamentally wrong with the way in which I'm approaching my life. And I was hearing Bill's word in a way that caused condemnation, not in a way that caused inspiration and provocation. Yeah. Yeah. But carrying on with the whole Christian fame thing, one of the things that I found myself saying to my students a lot when I was pastoring in school.
Let's just talk for a second about the strange dynamic within the SSM of And I don't know that I fully realized it. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this will help give people maybe a little bit more of a context. Because, I mean, if you think the Christian fame thing is weird in your local church in Denver or wherever, take that and multiply it by like 50 in BSSM.
Yeah.
Because, and there's beautiful parts of that BSSM culture that build and create this crazy spiritual momentum and this greenhouse for spiritual growth and this honor for leadership and different things. But it's so funny for me, dude, now having been on the other side of BSSM myself 3 years and then ministry with Bethel for a number of years. Yeah. And I talk to people who are currently in school and the like starry-eyed, like almost like this blind awe of whether it's leaders or different things or teaching, and it's not all bad. I'm kind of making an overemphasis of it, totally. But it's this kind of cultural thing there that's super unique to that environment that makes BSSM and makes comparison, I think, in that environment super easy. Oh yeah, super easy. I mean, it's an environment full of the craziest, most anointed, most hungry for God people on the planet. Yeah. And if you're not walking in with utter and complete assurance of your sonship, it can get hairy. It did for me. Yeah. So continue.
Yeah. So yeah, speaking to BSSM, I think, for me, there are a few factors that play into it, because BSSM, in terms of Christianity, Western charismatic Christianity, is a destination that has a name to it. Yes. You know, for lack of a better phrase, it's a glamorous place to be. If you're a Western charismatic Christian who likes worship music, status associated. It very much has status to it. You know, is that good? Is that bad? Is it neutral? Right. All three.
Yes. You know? Very well said.
And so you imagine that you are someone who, you know, is born in a completely different location, nowhere near Redding, California. You're watching Bethel TV, you listen to Bethel music, and you are just getting rocked and blasted by the revelation. It's like nothing you've heard before. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a room with 1,200 other people who have been willing to make some kind of sacrifice to be in that room at this glamorous destination for Western charismatic Christians who like modern worship music. And it's like a pressure cooker. And then you put on top of that the people who have been trusted by the house to lead you in this pressure cooker of hungry revivalists. And, you know, and then on top of that, essentially, because of this whole fame thing, because of the way we're drawn to power and we're drawn to status, you'll see, you know, the ones who get to be on the stage saying stuff and doing stuff that people find really powerful and impacting, they're the leaders of the school, they're the staff, they're the, you know, you don't get to hear about the guy from India who's seen crazy, amazing things in his lifetime that a lot of these staff would only dream of seeing, because he's in first year with you. He's in someone else's revival group. Only those who are close to him know about how many people he's seen raised from the dead, or how he's been bitten by a snake, and you know, all these things. You only get to hear from the staff on stage, and so it creates that kind of creates that dynamic that it can be super interesting. Yes. And yeah, so I think that is fame or notoriety in and of itself bad? I mean, because Jesus, even before the smartphone, Jesus was famous. You know, you'd have crowds of thousands following him into the wilderness just to listen to him talk.
Yeah, it says in Matthew 4, he went about all the cities and all the regions, healing the sick and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and the fame. Yeah. His fame spread throughout the whole region. Yeah. So Jesus totally did it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. He was famous in his region. He was known. He was a person to be associated with, because of everywhere he went, freedom broke out. You know, lives were changed. But yeah, to carry on what I was saying, it's a super interesting environment, and I think that, what I was initially saying, I remember I'd say to my students a lot of the time is that you need to stop trying so hard. Because that would happen so much. There'd be this thing where in BSSM we're taught a lot about being a powerful person. You're a powerful person. You're a world changer. You know, you are an anointed leader.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that the people who are recognized as leaders also have proximity to the microphone where their voice can be amplified for everyone in this, 2,000-seater auditorium to hear you.
Yes.
And so you'll find this thing where people are trying to get noticed, trying to be recognized as powerful, trying to get recognized as leaders.
Yep.
And it all kind of plays into the same thing where I don't think we're that good at, I still don't think Christians are that good at being in proximity to power and not letting it go to their heads. And when I say that, I don't have anyone in particular in mind.
No.
So this isn't me like being passive aggressive to anyone.
Totally.
But there is that thing where we do have a propensity to like it and to enjoy it and to,
Absolutely.
I think I heard recently that being on stage and having people respond well to you can be as addictive as many Class A drugs. It's a high.
Oh, they've studied that.
Yeah. I've studied that. I quoted it very, very poorly, but but broadly speaking, it's that thing of being on stage, having the adoration and the adulation of the crowds. It's an addiction.
Whoa.
It can become addictive.
Whoa.
And so, is there a need for people? Is there a need for messengers whose voices will be heard louder and will carry farther than others? Yeah. But how do we deal with that? If you happen to be one of those people who the Lord says, actually, I'm gonna provide a platform for you that your voice would be heard, throughout the nations.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, dude.
And when people start adoring you, and when people start putting all these things on you and getting all starry-eyed, do you get swept up in that?
Yeah.
Or, I don't even know how to finish the rest of that sentence because it's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, fame and the seeking of Christian fame.
Yes.
And and looking to be justified by the status that you have in the eyes of others. It's potentially very deadly, I think.
Dude, let me add to that and maybe you can relate to this, but my own personal story, having been in a ministry position, working for the church for the last number of years.
Yeah.
And then stepping down to start a construction business, I realized a number of things about my leadership and about my identity I don't think anyone can convince me otherwise. Dude, I don't care how long you've been in ministry or how confident you are in your identity or whatever your self-proclaimed state of maturity is, and I'm talking to myself just as much because I'm working through stuff, you know, I have not arrived by any means. Yes. But man, there is when you're in, let's just talk about ministry for a second, because you've been in ministry for a long time. I just kind of came out of a ministry in formal church position. The way our churches are set up right now, I think, is pretty weird because it's very incestuous.
No. Okay.
In the sense that we have.
I can't wait to hear you unpack this one. This is going to be great.
We have pastors who have been pastors their whole life in the church, teaching pastors who have been in their life in the church their whole life, teaching pastors who, and we need that. We need a side of Christianity and pastoral help and church leadership that are experts. Yeah. But also, we've bubbleized our church culture, I think, to a point where Christian fame kind of can thrive and become a thing. And it's almost like high school when you go to church or when you're in BSSM, because you're in its own little microcosm value system that is kind of the kingdom, but it's kind of its own thing, and you have churchianity instead of...
Yeah.
And so what I realized in my own life, when I stepped down, I had no idea the amount of validation and significance that I was actually drawing from, whether I was on a stage or not. It didn't really matter what the outlet was, but I was absolutely drawing pieces of identity and validation and significance in my life means something because I have a title.
Yeah.
And it I don't think it mattered how many people knew I had a title, but because I held a position and I knew certain people and I was accepted by them.
Yeah. And you'd be affirmed by them in the presence of other people.
I would be affirmed by them, and I had this subtle complex. And now, having it, I'm not in that anymore. I see, there's a deficit there. I was drawing from that.
Yeah.
Because I found myself in moments of like, why do I feel so insignificant?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Why do I feel, why am I thinking about myself as in a certain way or thinking about myself as different now that I'm not in ministry?
Yeah.
And man, I just wonder how much that's actually going on spread across the board.
Yeah. I think my estimation would be, and this is the conclusion that I've kind of come to, is, so I was a pastor in BSSM for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then between my second and my third year, so there were like a bunch of activities that you do throughout the year as a pastor, and maybe 5 or 6 times in the year you'll be in charge of the whole day in school. So you'll be leading corporate prayer, you'll be introducing the speakers, you'll be opening worship, you'll be transitioning worship, you'll be giving announcements, you'll be dismissing the class and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that transitioning worship, besides actually being the main speaker, transitioning worship is like the high point in the eyes of those gathered. Yeah. Whenever someone does like a great job transitioning worship, you'll get the high fives, the backs.
Right now on my spirit.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what the heck is that? Why is there a high point? When God's high point is you're on your knees in worship or in a prayer moment or washing dishes at work.
Totally.
That pisses me off so much. The high point, dude. Continue.
Yeah, and so I remember realizing, that between my second and third year, and I spoke about this to some of my leaders and a couple of the senior leadership at church, and it came down to this for me, which led on to the main point, is that I came to the point where I realized, because for me, it's quite easy for me if I feel like the Lord's doing it, it's quite easy for me to start speaking loudly, projecting, like, lift up a hand and shout and pray,
Yes.
And sometimes that's totally what the Lord is doing. And if that is what the Lord is doing, then do it, my
There's
bro. Like, do
when
it.
The Spirit of the Lord like comes on you, and it's like
just
something to like break.
Yes, exactly.
It's awesome.
It happens. So like the Lord is sometimes, in it, on it, through it, orchestrating it, 1 billion%.
Yeah.
But that being said, I realized that, and this is a conversation I had with one senior leader here at Bethel. I was like, if I, in and of myself, was in charge of the day, and it was my turn to close worship, and I had spent not a single second consulting Holy Spirit about what Holy Spirit wanted to do, but if I just, in and of my own strength, started, stirring up the people and getting them to a high point where they're lifting up their hand and shouting, which is a good thing, I know that I'm going to get congratulated by students and perhaps staff.
Yes.
And I don't even have to listen to the Lord to know that people are going to like that and appreciate that, and that is going to add to my equity, to my brand equity, to sound really cynical, in the eyes of the school and in the eyes of the church. And so that was something that I really began to wrestle with in my third year pastoring, because I had to ask myself a lot. Okay, what is the Lord actually? So is he actually causing me to bring everything down in a way that's going to make no one feel happy with me or no one be impressed by me? You know, if I feel like he's telling me to do it, okay, I'm going to do it, but I have to derive my satisfaction from knowing that it was what God told me to do, not what the people were going to love. And I think what that speaks to in an even deeper sense is for me being fully myself all the time, regardless. You know, because I know I felt times when, say, if someone was doing something in a particular way and they were getting recognized by senior leadership and they were getting recognized by all the staff and they were getting recognized by all the students, for me to be like, oh gosh, well, this is where the favor is, I need to be like that. Yes. And there were a couple of times when I got pulled into that, and I had to realize, okay, no matter what is happening, no matter how many people are looking at me, no matter how many people are not looking at me, for me, I have to be who I am. Yes. And that's good. That becomes a lot harder when you have a platform to maintain.
Why do you think that is?
Because you have more to lose.
Whoa.
You know, it's interesting because I know for me, the times, touch the mic, sorry. I know for me, the times when I've been the most outrageously generous is when I've had nothing. You know, I remember a time in first year when I woke up with $6 in my account and I had $5 on a Starbucks card and I was set to go and meet someone for coffee. Yeah. And so I buy myself a drink with the Starbucks card that I had. I don't, you know, I'm not a Starbucks drinker, but I was like, boom, $3 on the Starbucks card. Yeah. And then a friend of ours comes over and she's like, oh yeah, I came here for coffee, but something's wrong with my card. I don't know what it is. And I was like, here, have this card, you know, it's got $2 on it. How about it? You know? Right. And so.
Which is like 60% of your
it's like,
income at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I was like, yeah, just have it. But all of a sudden, if I have $50,000 and, you know, and I spend $30,000 of it on myself and I have the opportunity to give $20,000 away to bless someone, that's a lot harder. You know, we as humans, we find that a lot harder because now we're really losing something. You know, in the time I was like, well, I was like, I've only got $2, so just have it. You know, I need the Lord's help right now anyways. Just have this $2. And so, you know, for me to use my social media platform to say something that I know is going to anger a lot of people, it's not going to anger that many people, you know. And if I lose followers, well, I'll lose like 10 people. Who cares? But if I'm there sitting at 100 million people, and what I say is actually going to cause a ripple, and then that, you know, I'm going to be faced with a lot of opposition to what I have to say. Yeah. And then as well, what if my livelihood depends on the support of, you know, millions of these people? All of a sudden,
and you bring money into it.
Yeah, exactly. And I all of a sudden, I have a lot to lose. And so for me, being myself costs in a way that it didn't when I had nothing. Whoa. You know, I heard, so you'll like this one. I heard Rodney Mullen give a TED Talk a while ago. Rodney Mullen, the guy who invented the kickflip. Yeah. Amazing freestyle skater. Yeah. And so he talked about the first time that he won the freestyle event at the X Games. I think he won it 4 times in a row. Yeah. And so he said the first time he goes in as a nobody with nothing, he just had the freedom to be completely himself, to try everything, to fail. So the first time he was attaining, essentially. And then the next year he comes in, now all of a sudden, as opposed to being Rodney Mullen, he's Rodney Mullen. People are looking at him, people are expecting him to do this, to attain. Right. And he realized years later that for the next however many years, he won it 4 or 5 years in a row, he was defending the whole time. He wasn't taking risks like he used to. He wasn't trying to push the envelope. He was like, okay, I've got to do whatever I can to maintain what I have, because he'd reached the high point. He had a name, and that changed who he was in the world of freestyle skateboarding, which was a thing that he loved. Whoa. And so, you know, he didn't get there by being a guy who maintained. He got there by being a guy who pushed boundaries. But once he got there, the pressure to hold on to it, it got the better of him. And so then he was defending, and he wasn't doing what got him there in the first place. And I feel
that's an easy thing to happen.
Oh, it's really easy.
It
is really easy. It's so easy. You know, I'm not even putting any shame on him for that, because I understand.
No.
You know, and
so this is what I'm concerned about is happening in my own heart and in our churches. Is we get really good at doing church and maintaining our position, whether it's a position of leadership or whether it's a reputation of power, or whether it's just a reputation as a church, as a whole movement or whatever. I just think it's weird, man, that you can learn to talk a Christian charismatic language and how to have some people skills and talk on a microphone and really and do ministry and be powerfully used and be fruitful.
Totally.
And the crazy thing about the Lord is he's so nuanced.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's not intimidated. Well, I know he's not intimidated.
Yeah.
And I know he is no, I will totally use that. I will totally use those twisted motives and work it for my good.
Yeah.
And I will put a spin on that.
Yeah. And
this person has terrible theology, but they are, they're still super gifted, and I'm not afraid to do that.
Yeah.
And I wish I maybe had some better language about what I'm feeling toward how God thinks about the church. But man, he is just not afraid of all of our process and all of our twisted paradigms of leadership. And we're still his bride and beautiful to him in all of our weird Christian famous mentalities. And we show up to a Sunday morning and do church, and a lot of the times it's measured and exact, and there's all sorts of different reasons why we're on microphones and why we have lights and stages and an exact worship set and all these things. And God's 1,000% in that. And I think he's 1,000% in a desire for a different expression in a lot of different ways. And that's God. He can be 100% in this and blessing it, and my kids are here, so I'm going to be here. And then also but there's this, and this, and this. And that breaks my brain. So,
to bring it full circle, I think it comes down to the whole participation and reordering thing. I find myself checking my motives a lot because I'm not responsible for anyone else, and if I was trying to discern the motives of people's hearts, I bet you I get it wrong a lot of the time.
You messed up.
Yeah. Totally. And so, number one, I can't judge people who are Christian famous because I don't even know, I don't even know their story, the half of it, no matter what Wikipedia or Charisma News or whatever says. I don't know the nth of a percent of it. But as I'm checking my motives, I'm always asking myself, okay, how am I wanting to participate in this? How am I wanting to be a participant in what's going on? And I think a lot about, because I think about it with regard to myself. I'm like, okay, so what if all of a sudden I got some level of notoriety within the church world?
Sure.
And all of a sudden, I become an overnight sensation. I know what I've told myself is I can't let myself position myself within the midst of that in a way that seeks to maintain it, that I have to hold on to it. I've made, if it happens, which I'm not even saying it will, I don't even necessarily want it to happen. It's not something that I'm searching after. I've never preached at Bethel, and I'm fine with that. But if it was to happen, if I was to be a flash in the pan, it's like, cool, great. If God wants me in it for a moment and then to spend the rest of my days quietly working away here in Redding, California, but God's on it, that's totally fine. I don't ever want to be someone who's who's trying to reach out and hold on to the fame and the notoriety. And I'll tell you one funny thing that happened when I was in school, when I was pastoring in school.
Yeah.
Because another thing I was thinking through a lot last year when I was pastoring was the fact that, and even today I was thinking about this, that Jesus himself says he'll welcome the faithful ones in by saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant." But a lot of our particular emphasis seems to be on leadership and being an effective leader. And I was thinking about that a lot last year. And I asked my revival group, because we had a whole thing about surrendering everything, including the prophetic words that we've been given. Just giving it all back to God, and just being like, God, do whatever you want with my life. Yeah. And I asked them, how many of you have had it prophesied to you that you're going to be, mother and father of a nation, kind of like Joseph was to Egypt? And we had a bunch of guests in the room as well. Yeah. And I was expecting maybe 10 or 15. I had like 60 people in my revival group. It was like 50, 55. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was a moment that I was like, wow, we're just going around saying this left and center. Yes. I just remembered something else that's like that's also really convicted me. But I brought that up. I was like, 60 people in my revival group, 55 of them have been told that they are going to mother and father a nation. They are going to have a role of prominence within a particular nation. They are going to be they're going to be looked to for their advice and their leadership, like a mother or a father to an entire nation. And, I was like, it's probably not going to happen the way you're all thinking it's going to happen. Let's be real, Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe you'll be a mother or father in a community, but to be a mother or father of a nation, not everyone in this room is going to be like that, and you have to be okay with that. Yeah. And I listened to this one podcast by a guy, he's a theologian called Bradley Jersak. Okay. And he started off in charismatic. He was part of the Toronto Renewal, and now he's an Eastern Orthodox theologian, but he still believes in the gifts of the Spirit. He's really beautiful. Like, just listening to him talk about anything is really beautiful. Yeah. But when he was part of the renewal movement, he was at a church where they were fully in that with revivalism and everything like that. And I'm a fan of revival. I want to see it happen. Yes. And a lot of the people in his church were dealing with addictions and stuff like that. Okay. And he found that the thing that was second most likely to cause an addict to relapse was feeling as if they hadn't lived up to the grandiosity of the prophetic words they'd been given. So they'd been given words that were like, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do, you're going to be so big, so blah, 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 blah. 5, 10 years down the line, they're looking at their life thinking, I'm a failure because I'm not this really important mother or father to a nation. Wow. And that was the second most likely thing to cause relapse in the members of his church. And when I heard that, that was just like...
Oh, it's bringing tears to my eyes. Yeah. It's intense.
Because if we're making fame something to be attained for, if something to be reached for, and people don't get famous, and they don't have the big ministry, and they don't have the big speaking gigs, are they going to turn around, look at themselves, and say, "Well, I failed," which is a scary thought, honestly. And again, like, what do we want our participation in the kingdom to look like? Is that supposed to be a high point? I don't think either of us think it is. Yeah. There will be some people who will be famous, and bless them, like, seriously, and pray for them, pray for them. The amount of pressure that they'll be under is crazy. That's my wife calling me.
Do you want to grab it?
No, it's okay. We'll probably have to edit it. Yeah.
We'll just write it out.
Yeah. But, oh yeah.
Yeah, you wrap it up?
Well, what was I saying? Yeah, just...
There are people who are famous.
Yeah.
And
pray for them.
I think there will always be, in the heart of God,
they'll have
a plan and a strategy.
Yeah. There will be some with notoriety, but... it's not for everyone, and that's good. Yeah. Are there some famous people? Are there some people with notoriety, with reach, with this? Good. Totally. The Lord's in it, but He's equally in the other things. And At the end of the day, I want to hear good and faithful servant, not mighty and effective leader.
To wrap up, I think we need discernment, dude.
Mm-hmm.
We need spiritual eyes to see, in First or Second Kings, wherever it was, or maybe it's even, I can't remember now, Samuel or somewhere in there, when Samuel is anointing, going to the sons of Jesse, going through, and there's all these perspectives and paradigms on, it should be so-and-so as king, the oldest and the tallest and the best looking. That so speaks to me as a prophetic kind of analogy for the way that we think in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And how culture works, and how we've kind of adopted that in the church.
Yeah.
And then, but the prophet. So we need prophetic eyes.
Oh, yeah.
To be able to see and say, but God doesn't look at the outward appearance. Yeah. He looks at the heart. Mm-hmm. And that's what stands uppermost and the center stage, I think, of heaven. Yeah. Is that the motive of the heart is really on display, and that is so significant. So I feel like we need prophetic eyes and a discernment and a wisdom, a godly wisdom, to be able to see through heaven's eyes and see, to perform before the audience of one. Yeah. And one only, with nothing to lose and without strings attached to and ego feeding different things. Because like you said, man, I'm freaked out for me because I saw it and see it in my own life. Yeah.
It's a huge temptation.
It's intoxicating.
Yeah.
And we need, and it's not and we don't want it to make it a fear thing either, because that's just as much of an error. Yeah. Of I just won't ever be in front of people anymore, or ever be in leadership anymore because I'm jaded now to this expression of leadership. That's just as much error. So it can't be that. We need to give that disclaimer.
I mean, like Moses tried to say the same thing, and God was like, nope.
Totally. Yeah. The wife be a call.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, dude, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me, bro.
Let's do it again.
Yes.
When you start your podcast in the Lord's time, let's I will rep it hard. Yeah. I will plug that thing. Oh my gosh. Yes. I just love you, man. And
love you, bro.
Glad we could make this happen.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.
We'll do it again.
Do it again. Awesome. All right.
And how am I supposed to wear these old clothes when you made me brand new? They didn't fit anymore. Yeah.
I'm supposed to be a secret. Yeah.